Hello, welcome to another video. I just want to start out by thanking everyone who's been supporting me in making these videos. It means a lot, and I read all the comments and am happy to take any feedback or advice that people have to give concerning topics for these videos, um, the way I'm providing that information. If you have any suggestions, I'm willing to read them and look to improve my content as I continue to upload more regularly and try to build a good schedule around it. Anyway, getting on to the video's topic today, I'm going to be going over the Olaf versus Olaf CO matchup that is quite infamous in the global leagues for being kind of a snooze fest, mostly because it become really stally due to his superpower, as both players will start getting worn down by it, and it is one of those superpowers where you just kind of click it when you get it. Um, and it can get a little bit of a slog when players can't recapture properties due to the 8 HP infantries. But there's two key things to take into note when you're playing the Olaf mirror that you don't have to take into consideration when you're playing in other matchups in Tier 2. First off, economy is king when you're playing in an Olaf versus Olaf mirror. If you have, in a lot of matchups, if you have a 2k income lead, it's really not that much, and it's easily able to be overcame by good engagements and proper tactics. In an Olaf mirror, it just does not fly like that. If you're down 2k or more, it's really hard to claw back. The main reason is that once you get to the mid game, the superpowers are going to be flying back and forth, and it's going to be really hard for you to keep full health infantry to recapture properties. Most of the time, they'll get hit by a Winter Fury, they'll have to go back and heal, run back to the front lines, and then try to capture a property, get interrupted. You try to join cap, you get interrupted again. It can get really, really frustrating. So if you get those contested properties early by even maybe like skipping some of the safer properties, uh, securing those contested properties will make a huge difference in the late game. And if you go into Winter Fury time with 2k income lead or more, um, it's just a huge bonus. The second thing is that you want to get your Winter's Fury first, like at all costs. Um, Taking poor engagements is completely fine as Olaf, and a lot of the time the Olaf that is losing in terms of unit value oftentimes ends up winning because they get their superpower first and they can hit their full health vehicles into weakened 8 HP vehicles. And when the opponent's Winter Fury comes, they've got a bunch of weakened vehicles and they're hitting into your 8 HP vehicles with 8 HP vehicles. So they're not getting very much value, and uh, it can just lead to a situation where the Olaf that was behind suddenly rockets ahead, and it can break open the game very easily. So power charge usage and keeping a track of that is very important. So the first game, I'm going to show two games today. The first game is going to be sort of a showing of what not to do as Olaf. So gonna start up here, go through this quickly. I started off with a recon as Olaf because I want to try and interrupt some properties, which is my goal. I want to make sure that he doesn't get these contested properties. However, in this position, I decide to move my recon into the center in kind of a vulnerable position for this turn, because at this point tanks can be there, and it's very likely he have seen this recon go into this forest, which he did with his recon. So what happens here, he caps the properties, and he kills off the recon. So now he has a recon over me. He's built a second recon, and I'm without one. So it makes it a lot harder for me to interrupt properties, and he has basically free reign and a pretty nice pick off in the early game. So he can leverage that into stopping a bunch of my caps that I can't stop his. So I start capping a lot of stuff. It's also really sort of risky for me to cap this property. I guess I was a little bit desperate here to cap because I knew I was behind, but I think probably focusing onto the property right here would have been a much better option. Even if I couldn't have capped it this turn, preparing to cap it and go for like this sort of line here, and then capture this property and this property and this property would probably be a better decision. But you're going to see one of the major mistakes I make here is just playing way too scared. Look at the positioning on the infantry here. This infantry can only see up to this line, so I don't have any information on when he's capping this, so I can't really interrupt it. And I only have information on this property, which in general probably will go to him anyway. He'll probably capture all 3 of these, and these 3 should be mine. So I probably should be focusing more on getting this center property that I already have covered by a tank, instead of sort of looking at interrupting the bottom capture. So here he goes for interrupts, goes for captures, focuses on getting captures, and you can see he already has a 2k income lead. And here's another thing. I focus way too heavily on getting good engagements and like finishing off things. So instead of finishing off this capture here, let me just get back to where it was. I use this infantry to kill off another infantry, which just like makes no sense in an Olaf mirror. It might make more sense in some other matchups, and because I can always just capture this later, and I want to. My thought process was to sort of get into interrupting this property, but I think in the Olaf mirror this is just way too costly. And I'm just getting sort of like aggressive in places that it doesn't matter. Like, I haven't tried to interrupt any caps, I've just hit an infantry that isn't doing anything, and then I've allowed a contested property to go uncontested. And I don't even have my own version, I don't even have mine of that. I don't have this corner property right up here, and he has his. So he's up 3k right now in the Olaf mirror. So actually at this point, it doesn't really matter what, as long as he can stop me from capturing properties, he's pretty much won the game. He just has to take trades into me nonstop, brawl me out, make sure that I don't have a chance to capture the properties near where all the vehicles are fighting. And he has an artillery over here that basically is making it impossible for me to like win out in some kind of infantry guerrilla warfare against his. And even at the end of my turn, you can see that I actually have less charge than he does, so I've taken better trades overall. But it really doesn't matter when the income disparity is like it is. And he even gets an infantry up onto this property that 100% should be mine. And I have no vision of it, so there's not really anything I can do. I can't even make get a vehicle up there. So his income lead goes from 3k to 4k. And at this point, I try to go in with a bunch of vehicles, and we reach the point that I talked about earlier, which is that you do not want to let the opponent Olaf get super first. So going in for an attack like this where you just expose everything to try and get some good trades, even though it was a fairly good trade, we can see that I'm killing off a lot of units. But Olaf doesn't really actually care that much, because he'd rather have his units just die off than get hit by the Winter's Fury. If I could have hit like all different types of all different units on that turn, and then popped a Winter's Fury by getting my power charge before his, that would have been a much better turn. But this is why this is the first game I'm going to be showing. So Winter's Fury comes in, and you can see that it just kind of completely wrecks me. There's like no survivors. I'm getting destroyed, and there's very little way for me to rebuild because I am down 4k. So he can build up a Neo tank and tech up, and I do not have that option. So I try to do it at best I can and try to get some units up, keep some infantry healed up so that I have some chances to cap, but that's still pretty unlikely given the circumstance, given that I'm so far down in income and value. So that's mostly the point of this game. As you can tell, it just kind of bleeds out and then I resign. But now we'll get into a game where I actually utilize the tips I talked about at the start. So this game is a game where I'm going to showcase some of the proper ways to play the Olaf mirror and how my opponent blunders on a couple of these points. So first off, we're going to be focused on these 4 contested properties, because as we noted, you want to get an income lead and you want to maintain that before Winter's Fury goes off. So I will always try to interrupt those properties, and I will try to go for the caps on it myself to get that income lead. The second thing is that we want to take engagements that hit the most units possible, not focusing too much on killing off the units, but just dealing damage and then trying to look for power charge so we can get that Winter's Fury first. So I go for 3 caps on the contested properties to feel out where his pressure is and whether he'll contest any of these caps. So he goes for the recon hit plus the tank, brings in the infantry, but he does not even try to interrupt this property or this property. So I end up getting those for free, which is huge. I spread out my attacks. The 8 HP hits the 5 the tanks hit each other, 8-5 engagement, and then the tank hits the recon. Cap all the properties, and then I decide to move up all my tanks to start brawling with him because I want to start building up that power charge, getting a very brawly engagement now that I've gotten 2 of the contested properties and a secured income lead. So now my opponent goes, takes some engagements, definitely tried to clear that so that he could bring the tank on the city, but got kind of unlucky. 8-5 engagement on the tanks. Brings in this tank to hit, brings that tank down to 4, and then hits it with his 5 HP tank. Probably, I think, it would have been a better engagement to just hit with the anti-air and take a little bit of damage back, and then use this copter to hit the planes tank plus the 5 HP, and you could probably get a decent trade. Your 5 HP tank is not going to really be doing too much, so it's probably fine to kind of throw it to the wild. Also, healing up your units in this mirror, especially recons, is probably not too smart. You're just going to be taking the damage back, so you don't want to really be healing. Probably just like put it in a woods and let it give vision until it dies. Goes for 2 recons too, plus a copter and a tank. So here I block this cap by just sitting on top of it. So forcing some kind of vehicle to go over there if he wants to get that comm tower. Taking an engagement onto the tank on the road. Making sure to interrupt that cap and then start the cap myself. Threatening to go even further ahead in the income lead. Going for an engagement here. 9-3. And so, like, a lot of these tanks are kind of exposed. Like, this tank is very exposed to being just killed off, and it's in range of a copter that I have no answer to, but I'm mostly concerned about the power charge. I want this power charge. I want to take sort of semi-losing engagements in the early game now that I have an income lead. So he does kill off this tank, kills off this tank, goes to cap my property, brings up the artillery to defend it, just sort of starts building up his defenses, starts healing up all his units. But interestingly, he also does not interrupt this cap, so he just sort of lets me get another property. And that's one of the big no-nos of an Olaf mirror, is you cannot let Olaf just freely cap contested properties, because those Winter Furies are going to come in, and then it's going to become really difficult to do anything. I go for the cap on this comm tower. Now that I have that recon support, use the infantry to delay that capture, and go in with my tank. Get a little bit unlucky with that roll, a little bit annoyed about that, but I'm kind of just like chilling right now. I've got my units in position to potentially go for a break onto this infantry and then go into his a little bit deeper now that I have some anti-air in position and some copters built. Goes for an engagement on my tank, drops the cap, and then decides to kill off that infantry, hits my tank with his copter, and then brings in another copter. And at this point, this is just really risky to do when towers are getting so close. Like, he only needs a little bit more charge, and for me, my charge is only like 7,000 off. His is only like 15,000 off. So you really should not be bringing out copters like this when the power charge is getting so close. You want to sort of back off a bit until you can do one big push that gets you your superpower, and then that will be a pretty decisive move. But again, most of his units are just sort of healing and sitting up. I think it would probably be in his best interest to actually combine a couple of these units so that he doesn't get hit by Winter's Fury so hard. You can see he's up 9 units, but the power of income and the power of getting Winter's Fury first is going to be really evident here. I'm down at the start of the turn 30,000, but I get the 2 copter kills, pop the Winter's Fury, I can go and kill another copter with a full HP copter, kill off this anti-air, weaken these infantries, kill them off, continue the cap, break this position to kill the artillery, kill the other tank, kill that tank, kill the recon, and then I can combine these 2 weakened tanks together to make an 8 HP one, so that when it gets hit by Winter's Fury, it only goes down to 6, and it's still somewhat usable instead of having a 1 HP tank and a 3 HP tank. But at this point, you can see how devastating getting that Winter's Fury first was. I was down 30,000 at the start of the turn. I pop the Winter's Fury, I get great engagements, and now I'm up 60,000, 70,000. And I'm up 2k income. So at this point, he pops the Winter's Fury, goes for some engagements, and resigns. And I think that's a very clean example of how you utilize getting a good income lead and then going for your power charge first. My opponent in this game overextended when it was very close to that power point in the game and kind of gave it to me for free and let me just wipe him out with it. So I hope you found some important information about how to play in the Olaf mirror. I'm going to be making lots of videos with specific CO matchups in the future, so let me know in the comments if you have one in particular that you're interested in, and I'll be glad to make a video on it. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video.